So learning targets, summarizing and note-taking, and then non-linguistic representations, which I will say as few as times as possible because I say it wrong every time. So I just wanted to show this slide particularly. This is what I have on my projector every day before every single class period. Partially for myself, just as much for the students, because I teach a variety of different classes. I have about 6 different preps, so this kind of gets me in the right mindset for what class I'm about to teach. I also do a lot of multitasking with some coaching things and FBLA things, so I have students coming in and out, and so a lot of times right when the bell rings, I'm not anywhere near like ready to start class. I shouldn't say anywhere near, but always ready to start class. So this is what I show or display, and so there's always a bell ringer. Sometimes it's little things like you had to do, picking up handouts or candy or different things like that. Sometimes it's actually just reviewing some content, having them have conversations with people next to them, whatever that is. I almost forgot the most important part. I added a happy computer and a sick computer at the beginning of this year because, again, I'm sure all the high school students know this, but when they come in and sometimes it's just takes a lot of time to get them to put all their those things away if you're not using them that day. So it's pretty clear right away whether or not they're going to need their computer to start class. So the guy, he has different names in different classes, but that's him. That tells him what to do. Also then learning target, and I think, Kristen, Laughlin, do you communicate your targets this way? Mm-hmm. So I think at one of our sessions earlier this year, I stole this from Mr. Jacobson, had it up there, and he thought I said it was yours. So I stole it from you. So it says, today I will learn about learning targets, summarizing and note-taking, and non-linguistic representations so that I can use research-based strategies to teach in my content area. I know that I've got it when, and then I guess my challenge is just if you want to take one new thing away, or if you're already doing some of these things, to kind of reflect on what you are already doing in your room. And then the final thing I have on here is to-go box, so that's usually for big reminders if we have tests the next day, or if, and assignments due, resumes due, whatever that is. So this is what they see always when they come in. Goods and bads of always having this up here is they start to kind of take advantage of the fact that it's up here all the time. So I don't always instruct them, so usually we have to do kind of periodically remind them to do the things that the bell ringer or pay attention to the to-go box, since they kind of take advantage of the fact that it's there all the time. Okay, the things that we're discussing today mostly fit into the content area. So the summarizing and note-taking is design question 2, or fits in there in a lot of ways with interacting with new knowledge. And then the second part, that non-linguistic representations, the design question 3, just deepening or practicing with the knowledge that they've already obtained from you or from a text or whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to have you read. This is 3 truths and a lie, and these are this is factual and or non-factual information about summarizing and note-taking. So I'm challenging you to read all 4 of those and try to pick which one is the lie out of the 4, and then communicate that or whisper that to the person sitting next to you so they can hold you accountable for the one that you said.
I don't know what you thought.
I know, because I'm stuck between 2 of them.
I think it's
Then you know that a whole it says, I don't know, like, that's why number 4.
That's maybe worded correctly if it's not the right answer.
Okay, so we're just going to go through. First one is the truth. So a lot of times I kind of like give notes and then just never revisit those notes, never do anything with the notes, and so they just kind of sit there, and sometimes they're not even looked at again to review, to study. So it's just a constant revision process, adding to them, maybe taking things out if they took notes wrong the first time or whatever. The second one is also true. Jill and I had this conversation when she came in here and we were talking about it, and this is what I found out the hard way, is that you just make a lot of assumptions that they know what to write down, and if they do have nice notes, a lot of the times it's because they're repeating everything that you put on your projector as notes. So I've been trying to be more intentional, and that's where this kind of came in the handout we'll get to in a little bit this year about helping them through that process and not just expecting that they know that. The third one is actually the lie. Without getting into too much detail, I read some studies. One of my friends, good friends, is a professor at Down, and we're nerds, I guess, because we were eating sushi and talking about note-taking by hand, so that makes us nerds, I think. But she shared these studies with me, and it was just talking about the amount of retention that comes from handwriting notes versus being on your laptops. And despite, yes, on their laptops, they're probably, searching other things, games, doing things like that. But even if there was no wireless and they weren't doing any of those games or distracting things, there was a bunch of evidence that pointed to that handwriting notes helped with retention. Some of it's selectivity, so you can type faster, so you're not really like thinking about what you're saying, you're just typing everything down versus being selective in what you're writing down. So anyway, that's what I found. And then the final thing is also true. Knowing that they're going to come back and revisit those notes, or constantly like pointing them back to the notes so they have a purpose versus just making a lot of assumptions that they're taking them and taking them the right way. So that's just going to kind of start us. I'm going to talk through this handout a little bit. So I was doing some research on what method I wanted to use to help my students through the note-taking process, and I just found this. I think this was honestly like a life hack or something like that. So I just really liked it, and it's actually seemed to work pretty well. So the process is the preview process, opening the textbook, skimming through the textbook, looking for major headings, looking for subheadings, looking for italicized words, bold words for vocabulary, things like that. So just the first time through, it's just a really quick skim of the section or chapter. And then they go ahead and they read and summarize the chapter before we even get into it as a class. And I kind of give them a percentage on there, so it's about 10 to 25% they should be writing down. Next stage then is creating a keyword list, and really this is for their testing or when they're reviewing or testing over the material. So they make a keyword list based on those headings, vocabulary words, italicized words, whatever. And then the final thing is just constantly pointing back to reviews. So I check the notes, I don't grade the notes. I don't even know if they know if they know I don't grade them, but I do check them to see if they're there. And then if they are struggling, that's kind of place number one that we go to, is whether or not they're taking good notes. So here are some student examples. This is another kind of aspect of it. So on the left side is all of their summary. This is, I think, Michaela Pluta's, if I'm not wrong, yeah. So her summary is to the left, and then I put a line, or she puts a line about 2/3 across the page. And then all of this is any of the content that we talk in class. So if we take notes, they add examples. They add information if they missed information. Sometimes you can see she drew a little picture about the channel distribution right there, so they can draw freely or whatever on the side of their notes. This is some accounting notes. I think these are Ashley Carroll's. Same kind of process. And then I think this is Intro to Business, and this is Jacob Grant's notes. So it's kind of worked for me. I was saying I don't know if I can say like, yep, this is it. This is the reason that it's working, but I like what I see, I guess, from it. So that's the note taking. Any questions about that? I just gave you the handout so you can look through it or make choices based on it or whatever. No note taking questions? Okay. The second thing or last thing that I was going to talk about then is these non-linguistic representations. So I just took this from one of them, Marzano text. I don't even know the effective practices, I think. Just his definition of them. I always say graphic organizers, but I know there's a lot of things that fit in there as far as like making physical models or drawing pictures or whatever works in your content area. But I'm going to say a lot of graphic organizers because that's typically what I use. And then it links to that third design question. So they're working with the knowledge that they already have, or they're trying to strengthen that knowledge. And I just took some of those words. So chunking, processing, adding to, representing, reflecting, all of those things are happening when you use graphic organizers. So, okay, this is my standard sandwich that I started to make this year. So, is it Gary that comes from Waverly? Okay, so Gary comes from Waverly, and he gave us the standard handouts, or he showed us. I hope someone knows what I'm talking about, because I did put a picture of this. You know what I'm saying? He puts the standard, he has you like pre-assess where you're at, and then posts it. I'm getting some head nods, I like that. Okay, so that's where I start with the students, and I give them those, and they pre-assess where they're at on the standard. They go through the whole summary process, you know, them taking notes, me taking or giving them some information, all of that. Then they take a specific topic, typically it's one of the benchmarks, and they do a graphic organizer based on that benchmark. And then when I test them, I specifically write an essay question directly linked to that graphic organizer. So the nice thing about that is I don't really have to question like what they know as far as the benchmarks, because the question itself is, this essay question is the standard. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. So this is just one that I made, and it's advantages and disadvantages of ownership, business ownership, so different types of business ownership. So they actually took this test today, but it says rank the following forms of business ownership in order from best to worst using your knowledge of the advantages and disadvantages of each. So there's not one right answer here. They can put them in whatever order they want, but they have to be able to argue or communicate to me why they put them in that order. So this is one of our standards in business, is communicating business ownership forms. So that's my standard sandwich. Here's another example. They did it with a business cycle. Specifically, I think this one was on the Great Depression, but prosperity, recession, depression, recovery are all phases of the business cycle, and so they broke down current events, historical events that were happening in those times, and then that helps them then come back and write in paragraph form an essay.
So do they get to use those then on the
Not for
assessment?
studying, but they don't get to physically have it with them on the test. So they use it for more of the preparation, and then when it comes to test time, the essay, that's their time to show me what they can do or what they know. So that's how I use them in my class.
When you're having them take their own notes from the reading, are they doing that in class, or are they doing that at home and bringing it with them so that you are adding in class?
I have them do it in class, which I know is, you have to take class, I mean, it's a lot of class time to do that, which I have a little more freedom, I think, than maybe some people do. I'm not trying to like push through a huge list of benchmarks or standards, so I know I can stand up here and say that's, but that's, I do that. But usually, like the way textbooks are written, I mean, they're chunked pretty good, so I mean, you can have them do that in like even for one section in 20-25 minutes, you know, and then move on and elaborate on that or whatever. But I do give them class time. I know that they probably wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it consistently if I didn't, I don't think, so.
And then kids that don't finish, do they take it home?
Yes, if they wouldn't finish or something, yes, a lot of them do then take it home. But most of them have time to do it and to finish it in class. But yeah, unfortunately, because you're not taking it for a grade, they don't always understand the connection and they're not doing it at home. So I give them class time to do it. I don't know, does anyone else give class time to like read in class, read in books or read, yeah. So I just believe in like the reading and the recording is a huge part of their learning, and unfortunately they don't always make that connection, and they need to do that for college. A lot of the stuff that they'll cover in college, it's not being explained to them always, it's through the textbook. So I don't know, that works for me, I guess.